Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are focusing on emphasis on personality structure or traits. So let's get on to the topic. So the first topic is Henry Murray. Before that, what is a trait? A trait in personality psychology is generally defined as a component or distinguishing characteristics of an individual's personality that is stable across time and external situation. So a trait theory is single approach to personality that is more directly based on the corroborated by research data. A trait is an element of personality that causes individuals to act in similar fashion across different social settings. For example, if a person is socially active or extrovert, they are likely to be outgoing and social in most situations than being shy and inhibited. So the first person is Henry Murray. Henry Murray was born in New York in 1893. His system of personality was personology. So there are few principles. The first principle is that personology is that personality is rooted in the brain. The second principle in Murray's system involves idea of tension reduction. The third principle of Murray's personology is that individuals' personality continue to develop over time and is constructed of all events that occur during the course of that person's life. The fourth principle is that personality is not static. The fifth principle, the last principle, states that the uniqueness of each person while recognizing similarity among all people. So, Murray classified division of personality just like Sigmund Freud, id, superego, and ego. Id is containing the primitive, moral, lustful impulses described by Freud. It also contains desirable impulses such as empathy and love. The superego, defined as the internalization of the culture's value norms by which rules come to evaluate, judge a behavior and that of others. Superego is shaped by parents and authority figure, peer groups, and culture. Now, ego. Ego is the ideal component of the superego that contains moral or the ideal behavior for which a person should strive. Now, there are certain needs. So, most important contribution to the theory and research of personality is the use of concept or need to explain motivation as the direction of behavior. A need involves psychochemical force in the brain that organizes and directs intellectual and perceptual ability. A need may arise from internal processes such as hunger or thirst or from events in the environment. There are different types of need, primary and secondary needs. Primary needs arise from internally body states that includes needs required for survival. Secondary needs or the psychogenic needs are concerned with emotional and psychological needs such as achievement and affiliation. Then reactive and proactive needs. Reactive needs involves a person's response to something specific in the environment and aroused by only the object that appears. Proactive needs do not depend upon the presence of a particular object, but they are spontaneous that need elicit appropriate behavior whenever they are aroused or independent of the environment. Now, psychogenic needs. There are ambition needs. Ambition needs are related to the needs of achievement and recognition. These needs of achievement is often expressed by succeeding and achieving goals and overcoming obstacles. The need for recognition is met by gaining social status and displaying achievement. Sometimes the ambitious needs involves need for exhibition or the desire to shock or thrill other people. Now there are materialistic needs. These needs center on the acquisition, construction, and order of retention. These needs often involve obtaining items such as buying material objects that we desire. Now there are power needs, that is, the needs that tend to center on our own independence as well as the needs to control others. Henry Murray believed that autonomy was a powerful need involving the desire for independence and resistance. Affection needs. Affection needs are centered on a desire to love and to be loved. We have need for affiliation and seek the company of other people. Now, information needs. These needs center around gaining knowledge and using it with others. Now, we have characteristics of needs. Need, prepotency, fusion of needs, subsidiation and press. Now there is personality development in childhood. There are 5 stages characterized by pleasurable condition that is inevitably terminated by society's needs. The claustral stage. This is similar to fetus in a womb. This is like the desire to be in a small, warm, dark place that are safe and secluded. Oral stage. This is combination of mouth activities and passive tendencies and the need to be supported and protected. Behavioral manifestations includes eating, nail biting, etc. Oral aggression combines the oral and aggressive behaviors: nail biting, spitting, shouting, verbal aggression. Oral rejection complex involves vomiting, being picky about food, eating little, etc. The anal stage. This is anal rejection complex where the preoccupation with the decaffeation, anal humor, feces like material, dirt, mud, plaster, clay. Person with this complex may be dirty and disorganized. The urethral stage. Urethral stage is associated with excessive ambition, disordered sense of self-esteem, bedwetting, and self-love. It is called Icarus complex. The genital or the castration stage. This is castration is anxiety evoked from a boy's fantasy that is penis may be cut off. Now there is structure of personality and definition of personality. It's the same thing. Now there are types of needs: primary needs, secondary needs. We already discussed. Next is Gordon W. Allport. So, structure of personality and dynamic of personality. He explained personality structure as a primarily represented in terms of traits, and at the same time behavior is motivated and driven by traits. The structure and the dynamics are most part of one and the same. He has 2 viewpoints. First is personality, a psychological interpretation. Second pattern shows growth in personality. Gordon Allport's reflected in variety of concepts. Now personality, character and temperament. Personality is a dynamic organization within the individual of those psychosocial systems that determine the unique adjustment to his environment. This definition was given by Allport. Dynamic organization refers to personality is constantly developing and changing, although at the same time there is an organization system that binds together the various components of the personality. Now what is a trait? Trait is a neuropsychic structure having capacity to render many stimuli functionally equivalent and initiate and guide equivalent forms of adaptive and expressive behavior. There are 2 points about Allport's trait. The first trait is that they are loose tendencies. Second traits are inferred from behavior and not directly observed. Now there are types of traits. Cardinal trait. It is almost every act of a person who possesses. One seems to be influencing the other. Variety of disposition relatively unusual and not observed to many people. Central disposition. It is more typical, presented tendency, high characteristics of individual and very easy to infer. Now secondary disposition. This is limited and its occurrence less crucial to a description of the personality and more localized to the response as it leads to as well as the stimuli to which it appropriates. Now functional autonomy. The idea that motives in the normal, mature adult and independent of this childhood experience originally appeared. Functional autonomy regard as the adult motives variety, self-sustaining contemporary system growing out of preceding system, but functionally independent of them. Preservative functional autonomy and appropriate functional autonomy. The first one is level of functional autonomy that relates to lower level and routine behavior. The second one is that it relates to a value, self-image and lifestyle. Proprium, Alport's term for ego or the self. Then in 1943 and again in 1955 he reviewed the many meaning of ego and the self in psychological writing. Stages of development. Stage 1, 2, 3 are during the first 3 years. In this stage, infants become aware of their own existence and distinguish between their bodies from objects in the environment. Self-identity. Children realize their identity and remain intact despite many changes that are taking place. Self-esteem. Children learn to take pride in their accomplishment. Extinction of self. Stage 4 and 5 emerge as the fourth stage. In this stage, children become to recognize the object and people are part of their world. Self-image. Children develop actual and idealized image of themselves and their behavior and they become satisfying prenatal expectation. Self as rational copper. Stage 6 develop during the 6 to 12 children begin to apply reason logic to everyday problems. Appropriate striving. Stage level 7 develop during adolescence. Young people begin to formulate long range of goals and plans. The development of personality. Then it starts from infancy. Transformation of the infants. The process of development takes place along multiple lines. A wide variety of mechanisms and principles considered appropriate for the Alport to describe changes that take place between infancy and adulthood. Adult. A person who is determined of behavior, set of organized and congruent traits. The traits have arisen in variety of means of sparse motivational equipment characterized by newborn infant. Now Raymond B. Cattell. Raymond B. Cattell. So Raymond Bernard Cattell was born in England in 1905. He got Bachelor of Science of Degree in Chemistry from University of London when he was 19 and his PhD from the same institution when he was 24. He was the research assistant to the famous psychologist Charles Spearman. Spearman devised the factor analysis and he was also author and co-author of many personality tests including culture for intelligence test, 8-state questionnaire, motivation analysis and objective analysis, etc. Defining personality. So Cattell defined personality as that which tells a person will do when placed in a given situation. And he also gave a mathematical equation. Now there is factor analysis. It is a method to underlining correlation in a large group of data. It is ideal tool for simplifying very large amount of data to find common characteristics within. According to traits are relatively, according to Cattell, Traits are relatively permanent broader reaction of tendencies serve to be the building blocks of personality. He classified traits as common and unique traits, ability and temperament and dynamic trait, surface and source trait, constitutional traits and environmental mold. Traits, common traits and unique traits. Common traits and unique traits. Common trait is one that is it is present in everyone. It is commonly seen. Everyone has a trait to some extent or the other. Unique traits are only present in general individuals, specific individuals. Ability, temperament and dynamic trait. Ability trait is the person's skills in dealing with the complexity of a given situation. Thus, intelligence in ability trait in Cattell's scheme. Temperament refers to stylistic tendency of being, for example, chronically irritable, excitable, moody, easygoing, or bold. Dynamic trait refers to a person's motivation, interest, and individual characterized, for example, ambitious, power-seeking, or sports-oriented. Constitutional and environmental mold traits. Constitutional and environmental mold traits are determined by biology. That not necessarily innate. For example, alcohol intake, behavior such as carelessness, talkativeness, slurred speech, environment. Mold traits determined by experience, that is by interaction with the environment. Surface versus source trait. Surface trait are simply a collection of trait elements of greater or lesser width of representation that go together in many different individual circumstances. Source trait, in contrast, is the underlying factor that controls the overall variation in the surface cluster. Major source traits and primary factor. According to Cattell, many attempt to discover the major source or the primary factor must begin with inadequacy of invention of the personality that may use to describe the individual. He called this domain of personality traits in personality sphere and suggested that only practical source of a for listening in such a listing is language. There are 16 factors he introduced. 16 personality questionnaire also constructed by him. Warmth, reasoning ability, emotional stability, dominance, liveliness, rule consciousness, social boldness, sensitivity, vigilance, abstractedness, privateness, apprehension, openness to change, self-reliance, perfectionism, and tension. So warmth, individual low on A factor tend to be reserved and cautious about involvement with others. High score may have strong interest in people and seeking interaction that is called for closeness with others. Now reasoning ability. Low score on this have lower intellectual ability. High score often have high intellectual ability. Emotional stability. Low score, they may feel powerless to control others' life. High score may take life in stride and cope with stress and challenges. No dominance. Low score are cooperative and agreeable tendency to accommodate others' wishes. High scorers, Cattell's maintained a vocal in expressing their opinion and wishes to have commanding, taking charge presence. Liveliness. Low scorers, reliable, mature, although they are not life of the party. High scorers are highly spirited and stimulating, drawn to social situation. Ninth one is rule consciousness. Low factor tend to avoid following rules and regulation. High scorers become conventional cultural standard. 10th one is social boldness. Low scorers social boldness. Low scorers may afraid to speak in front of group, and high scorers may be social contact and can be fearless in face of intimidating social situation. Sensitivity. Low scorers may be tough-minded, is concerned with being objective, practical, include taking feeling into account. High scorers may be tender-minded and refined and empathetic. Vigilance. People who are low scorer expect fair treatment from others and have trusting relationship. High scorers may be suspicious, distrustful of others. Abstractness. Low scorers may tend to focus on specific observable data and are good at implementing concrete solutions to problems. High scorers may be preoccupied with thinking, imagination, fantasy, and creative. 14th one, privateness. Low scorers are open and willing to talk readily about themselves. High scorers are tactful, diplomatic, and insightful regarding the other's motives. Apprehension. Low scorers tend to be untroubled by self-doubt. High scorers are insecure, anxious, and guilt-prone. Openness to change. Low scorers adhere to traditional way of behaving. High scorers think about the way they can change the status. Factor Q2 is self-reliance. Low scorers prefer being around others and like to work in groups. High scorers enjoy spending time alone and prefer to rely on their own thinking and making decisions. Factor Q3 is perfection. Low scorers are unstructured and prefer to have decisions to change. High scorers are organized and plan ahead. They are more comfortable at structured situations. Q4 is tension. Low scorers, individuals are laid back and tend to be frustrated. High scorers have considerable drive and fidgety when they have to wait. Next one is Hans Eysenck. Eysenck suggested that there are two dimensions: extroversion versus introversion, neuroticism versus stable, and the third dimension is psychotism. Then, as you can see, extroverts by contrast between neuroticism and normality, such as mood. His full model includes two independent dimensions: extroversion versus introversion, neuroticism versus normality, and there is psychotism. Dimension subsumes the normal behavior through which criminal and psychopathic behavior to schizophrenic and other psychotic states in which the contact is lost with reality and severe disorders, cognition and affection and behavior. Eysenck responded that the effect of hinged on three experimental parameters. First, he argued that 1957 presentation of his model has specified that inhibition would only develop during non-reinforced trials in which tone was presented without the puff of air. And secondly, a weak air puff should be led to more inhibition. And the more about Hans Eysenck I have discussed in my previous video. Please do check out that. Eysenck relates difference in neuroticism versus extroversion level of activity in the ascending reticular activating system. Activity in the ARAS serves to be stimulating the cerebral cortex, leading to higher cortical arousal. Because of greater ARS activity, introverts are characterized higher level of cortical arousal than extroverts. Individual difference in emotionally or neurotic depends upon the level of activity in the visceral brain, which consists of hippocampus, amygdala, hypothalamus.